Welcome to another episode of SPCs Unleashed, or word yet to be decided, Unleashed. We are going to chat about skill sets in the world of AI here, and we are in the capable hands of Ali. I'm going to hand over while I get my head together. Ali, take us away, mate.
Thank you so much. After a couple of episodes of, let's say, zooming in onto anything AI, I thought let's zoom in onto the skill sets that are required in this new world. And more specifically, what would happen if you do not have those skill sets? Because that's going to be the reality. We're going to have people that are AI literate, and we have people that are AI illiterate, basically working side by side in companies. And what is going to happen? What does that mean? So in today's session, there's a little bit of doomsday thinking. So we're trying to look a little bit into the future, see what can happen, and what kind of skills are required to leverage AI. I think it was 2 episodes ago that I think the three of you, so that's Mark, Stefan, and Nico. I think the three of you zoomed in onto how to upskill yourself in AI, what you would be able to do. Today we're going to essentially build upon that and look at what that means for the professional environment. And so more specifically, today we have Fred Flintstone that we're going to talk a little bit about. And as I mentioned, how does the world look like if we have a couple of people that are AI literate and people that are AI illiterate? So let's start with true passion, special moments, surprises, and challenges. Stefan.
Thank you, Ali. I think we're talking about skills, but let me start with the momentum and the speed. You just mentioned it, right? It's so many things are changing so fast. I'm blown away by the momentum, the speed, and on the other hand, I'm still thinking, yes, the glass is half full. But when it comes to skills, which part is already full, and how do we fill the glass? Maybe to the brim, maybe not. Let's find out.
And are people able to
Yes.
fill it up until the brim? Yeah. Thank you. How about you, Mark?
I had a really interesting week that ran through my head very quickly when I thought about this question. And I'm having a lot of flashbacks at the moment to parallels behind the disruption that AI is driving and the types of disruption that we talked about for years and years and years with Agile, right? The world is changing faster, et cetera, et cetera. I had a flashback to my very early days of moving from Agile I chose for myself on a dev team to Agile being mandated in a corporate. And I went from being a tech lead who got his team excited about it because it felt like a better way to work as a software developer. And when I thought of Agile skill sets, I thought of CI/CD, TDD, refactoring, loosely coupled design. That was Agile skill sets in my head. And then I met the enterprise environment and, none of the engineers wanted to borrow it. And I looked at the way they worked and the world they were in. And it's like, okay, all the things that actually excited me as a dev about Agile are so far out of reach for these people that if I even waste time talking about them, it's not going to work well, right? In theory, they had a guy in there who was a tech coach, because it was also where I got introduced to the idea you could have process coaches with Agile. But they had a tech coach in there who was there. He was brilliant at doing test automation. He was there to help them build test automation rigs, and people were refusing to talk to him. And he was a young engineer. He wound up crying on the floor. We really had to pick him up at the time. But I think there's that thing for me with Agile, and it's not a question of literate and illiterate as, bought in, not bought in, convinced, not convinced. And I think you just got to recognize you got to meet people where they are. And if you're talking about AI skill sets, you're probably by nature talking about people who are at least convinced. But you got to know where they are on the journey and what's the next step that's relevant for them.
Nice. And sort of a nice segue to look at this topic, sort of meeting people where they are, because not everybody will be convinced. And this sort of thunderstorm is coming or is already here. But it doesn't mean necessarily that everyone is going to be onboarded or onboarded from the beginning. Yeah. Do you guys remember when the term let's Google this became a thing.
Yep.
Right? When sort of a couple of years after Google, some weird search engine that had a very ugly logo back in the days, but had like a completely empty, how do you call it, starting page with just one input field, became super popular because everyone was using Google, and let's Google it became a thing. Well, I think that very soon, or maybe it's already there will be an AI equivalent. Like it is, I think that we're going to have, it's going to be so embedded into day-to-day life that we're going to talk about something that is sort of AI enhanced or AI enforced or not, or whether it is human made, originally human made. I have no idea. So I think that we're sort of in that moment. And that's mainly because what I think is that anything related to research or figuring things out, or identifying trends, doing that with AI happens so much quicker. And therefore, leveraging it, you'll be part of one group, and you'd have another group of people that either refuse or cannot or have not leveraged it yet. So that's is it a passion? No, I think for me it's more of it's sort of an extreme interest at the moment.
May I jump in, Ali? May I jump in? I think for me, it's a reality. Like teaching people, and I remember those years ago when Google came up, you could feel a different behavior in the room, right? Students Google stuff and challenged you as a teacher or a trainer, and now it's AI. They challenge you immediately, right? Accompanying students doing their master thesis or searching, doing research, it's a different behavior.
I think
For me, it's real, hitting reality, right?
For me, the funny thing about that is when I characterize somebody who has not yet begun their AI journey, my characterization is usually I use ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude as a better Google. Right? Because I think there's a lot of people for whom that is Gen AI. It's a slightly better Google. Right? I don't have to click on stuff because it gives me answer on my screen. Saves me checking links.
Right.
Send me the sources. Yeah. No, exactly. It's there's something happening there. It's going to be the new Google, or the new Let's Google this. But in this episode, we're going to talk about skill sets, and I've done a little bit of research up front. As a matter of fact, I heard the initial story in podcast that talked about, let's say, the jobs that have, let's say, relatively higher exposure to AI taking some things over. And so there is this list that is created by Daniel Rock. It's called the AI exposure list, where he worked together with researchers from OpenAI to essentially create a database with thousands of jobs and about 19,000 tasks or responsibilities behind them. And then for each of these tasks or responsibilities, they gave that a score. So imagine, I don't know, evaluating a certain text, whether it is, a teacher does that, a lawyer does that, we have a proofreader that does that. There are quite a lot of people that in a way have the same responsibility, and they scored each of these responsibilities with either was E0 as a code, which means that task that did not have any exposure to AI taking it over. E1 means yes, it has exposure, and E2 meant no idea. And what happened? All of a sudden, you could see a list. You could still find that the AI exposure list, which is based on the activities or responsibilities coming from ONET, which is O star NET, which is a US database that characterizes all types of tasks behind jobs or job titles. You'd see sort of a list of jobs that are relatively high on AI exposure, where AI would be able to take up or replace a considerable amount of tasks that the job embodies. And you would have jobs that, let's say, have relatively low or maybe absolutely no AI exposure. So I think that's what people are a little bit scared of, is, is my job going to be taken over by AI? But before doing that, if anyone wants to jump into that list, I'm happy to share a couple of details of it. But before that, let's talk about these skills that AI, the skills that you need to be able to basically leverage AI. So, question is, what are AI skills that people can adopt in order to leverage it? Who'd like to start?
Stephan, do you want to fire up first?
This time the preparation for me was totally different. When I saw the triggers from Ali, I just wrote down some thoughts, right? What's in my mind, what bothers me. And then I used AI to do some research as well. And it kind of blew me away because when we talk about skills, all of a sudden some stuff popped up that probably I would have considered during my preparation, but he wasn't first-class citizen. Let me be a bit more generic, like we need collaboration skills. We know that if we want to collaborate with people, if you're a tech nerd, if you can't express yourself and communicate, pretty hard. And now we talked a few episodes about what's the new type of team, like a developer and agents. So you have intelligent partners, but those partners may also hallucinate. How do you collaborate in such an environment, right? And that opens probably up one of these skills that you already mentioned, Ali. The other one is you mentioned AI literacy skills, right? And you provoked us. Some will be have some literacy, some will be illiterate. There will be a huge range. First of all, understanding what's going on. I'm still in that mode. What's happening in front of me? What kind of limitations do I have as a human being? What are the limitations of the agents or a system you create? And then going back to, hey, we're talking about cognitive skills as well, right? I do have a history of 30 years professional life. This has an impact on me. And now, how do I work with that backpack? How do I work with a cognitive load? We had cognitive loads before AI, right? How do we deal with that one? And then finally, through that research and prompting a little bit, how do I now navigate myself within a huge landscape of skill sets? Which one to tackle first? That was kind of my thinking, regarding your first trigger, right? So collaboration, nothing new, but in a different setup. Literacy, if you can't read, if you can't write, if you can't express yourself, pretty tough. But now you have different partners, and the adaptation speed probably is huge, right? I'm also teaching at the University of Applied Sciences. I'm now overhauling some of the use cases that I will use the next few months, because what I taught last year is kind of obsolete. And that's probably my 2 cents regarding your entry trigger about skills.
Thank you, Stephan. How about you, Mark?
I went instantly when I read your trigger. I went, oh, of course we're going to talk about prompt engineering and context engineering. And then I actually stopped. Because if you think about where do you start, the number one skill I think you need is probably not a skill set so much as a mindset, is you need curiosity. Because, it's kind of like Google became equivalent for search on the internet and get a ranked list of results, right? And I think for a lot of people, AI equals ChatGPT or your flavor of choice. But there's a truth that says that's such a small fragment of what AI actually is. Like, if you think about some of the most startling things that people are doing with AI at the moment, they're not doing it with Gen AI. You'd never drive a car using Gen AI. You'd never operate heavy machinery using Gen AI, right? It's the wrong tool. And, it could be as simple as, and I got reminded of this the other day, right? Think about Microsoft Office. And we've all been using Microsoft Office. We've been suffering to use Microsoft Office for many, many, many years.
Oh,
And I remember when I was younger, when I got a new version of a bit of software like that, I was really interested to go, what are the new features and how am I going to take advantage of it? I can't remember the last time I actually went and looked at what are the new features that they're putting into Excel and Word. Because I use them when I have to, and I use them for what I know they're good at, and that's the place they live in my life.
and as long as they don't change the position of the button.
Yes, exactly, right? But then I was chatting to Eric Willicke the other day, and he's in this world where, they're a Microsoft shop and they don't have access to a lot of the fun AI stuff because carefully locked down. But he's been poking at what you can just do inside Office because of all of the AI-powered features they've been adding to Office. And there's no prompting involved in learning that. What was involved in learning it was to go, let me be curious. What are the new AI-powered features that they're sticking in Excel or Word? Same thing applies, I think, if you look at, use of ChatGPT, use of more advanced AI capabilities. Any of that stuff is, am I curious? And how am I thinking about how I can leverage these new ideas to improve my effectiveness in my work? And maybe that is improve my effectiveness because it's automate or reduce the need for me to do low value things. Maybe it's improve my effectiveness because I have a critical thinking partner on hand and I know how to get the most from them. Maybe it's because I build tools that I use again and again and again. Maybe it's because I find different ways of communicating. But at the end of the day, it's like, am I thinking about how to be more effective in my job? And am I being curious? And if I can take those two skills, for me, they're the foundation of everything else.
I fully agree.
And I like it, Mark, that you talked about being more effective, not first of all being more efficient, right? And that's the lean thinking again. Like if you are not effective and using what is at hand regarding tool sets, stuff like that, we're probably still in the same mode, crap in, crap out.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big pitfalls that we have also when it comes to skills.
There needs to be, in a way, a certain sense of urgency, even if it's just with yourself. And curiosity is, in a way, it precedes the sense of urgency, but it is a similar trigger. And it's funny, while you were talking, Mark, you basically mentioned in the exact same order the topics that I wrote as an answer to this trigger. Trigger was, what are the AI skills that people can adopt? Well, what did I write? Critical thinking. You mentioned that because yes, AI can produce a lot. Gen AI and LLMs can produce a lot, but whatever is produced still requires an evaluation. Why? Because of hallucinations, because of small little maybe visual irregularities. So it requires sort of a critical thinking mindset. Not everyone has that, or not everyone wants to have that. I think if you're a software developer for a long part of your life, you've been exposed to so much debugging, and debugging is pure headache. Always has been, but it's you're slowing down basically everything to look at a certain process step by step to identify why it's going wrong. And it's such an extremely painful procedure, but it's required. The second topic that I wrote down, the tools that you could use. So being curious to see what is out there, what kind of tools are out there. Is it more than just ChatGPT or Gemini that you can use? Because there's so many AI-powered tools. Just the other day, I opened up the Adobe website. I have an account. I use Photoshop and Illustrator and those kind of things quite a few times. But behind it is the sort of the Adobe Creative Cloud. And in there is also a lot of free tools that you could use. Close to all of them these days are AI powered.
Yeah.
It's crazy where you could basically do anything with any video. So there's AI tools that can adjust a video that you upload in all types of forms and shapes. You can make pictures out of it. You can make an animated GIF out of it. You could extract text out of it. You could extract labels and posters out of it. You can create an entire sort of timeline of posts that you could use on your social media on it. All AI powered. So that creativity to trying to figure out what kind of tools are out there and which ones can we use, is I think becoming more important. And the last thing that I wrote down was prompt engineering, which is basically the ability to express yourself to a Gen AI, to be able to give it context, to be able to let's say give it a little bit more instruction than a single line. I think that skill is something that we'll have to develop. Just thinking, or how do you call it, building upon that. We talked about skills that you as an individual should have or can use in order to leverage AI. But what would happen if peers around you have been able to develop these skills, while you have not been able to. So what do you think happens? So there's a little bit doomsday thinking happening right now. Stefan.
Yeah, what springs to my mind is FOMO, fear of missing out, right? The first rule or the first fact, it's happening now, not in some distant future. We probably don't have the time to tap into that discussion. What happens now? The question for me is, do I allow some gaps to open and widen over time? Maybe in some domains, yes, because it's not my domain. Other people will cover that. But in my main domain or in my profession, am I aware how fast the gap can open and how fast it takes a dimension where I can't catch up anymore? So that's one of the questions, and that's probably one of the facts that will happen for certain people. The other one I wrote down is recovery becomes harder. The longer you wait, the further it moves away, right? And if it's too far away, it's gone. And then let's not forget, this world is a world of competition. Your peers won't slow down, right? We talk a lot about what is the weakest link or what is the limiting factor in a system. And I might assume that probably in the future, we don't, in certain contexts, we don't have to wait for the limiting factor, or we probably have to address even queues in a different way, bottlenecks in a different way, because what happens now, you have a much more fragmentation in that world, local optimization, although having a system above that coordinates in a way that we probably don't understand. And these are the thoughts that go through my mind when I think about, what's going on now? And if I don't keep up with the pace in certain areas, I'll be probably lost.
Yeah. You'd have like two camps: a camp of people that have been busy with it for a longer period of time in whatever shape or form, and a group that is, the laggards. And as you mentioned, the learning curve to get yourself out of the laggards into the group of, let's say, people that are literate, AI-literate in this case. Yeah, maybe that learning curve becomes too big. How about you, Mark?
So I had a very fancy answer lined up, and I'm just going to ditch my whole planned answer. So I was listening to Stefan, and I had a flashback, right? So here's the flashback. Back when I was at uni, I had, whatever that is, 35 years ago, I had a job where I worked part-time as a service guy for IBM PCs, back when they were IBM PCs. But then what I also did was I used to do temp secretarial work because I could type, and I could type really fast. And this was back in the days when there were still secretarial pools and dedicated word processing machines with printers in acoustic hoods because they were so loud, right? Stefan's old enough to remember those days.
It was loud.
and I used to turn up like this 18-year-old kid, male, to do 2 weeks in the secretarial pool, where it was a group and everybody in that secretarial pool at that time, of course, was a woman. And you had an inbox that received pieces of paper with red pen on them and an outbox where you put printouts. Because nobody in the office knew how to type. Secretarial pool existed to solve that problem. And every now and again, I would go into secretarial pool where it wasn't a word processing machine. They had IBM PCs, and we'd be running Display Write or WordStar or something like that. And of course, being a lazy programmer as I am, I would go and use macros and actually use features and stuff to get things done faster. And there would always be this process of people would look up and go, oh my goodness, there's a guy turning up in the secretarial pool. This is never going to work. And then I'd start typing, and I typed at 120 words a minute. And they go, oh, okay, you can type at least. But we lived in a world where it was okay, right? You could have a really good career without knowing how to type. And where, as a manager, you had somebody to do your typing for you, and all you had to do was red pen.
As long as you had the red pen.
And that world lasted in transition for a really long time. But you have to use a lot of imagination to think of a world where you could actually live in an office in a professional life and not be able to type or know how to turn a computer on. And I think AI is more disruptive than that. And you just get to make a choice, right? Eventually, everybody learnt to type. and they caught up with a new way of life and they survived. But I don't think life looked that much different because people knew how to type compared to how different it's going to look because AIs are sitting there doing ridiculously crazy, powerful things in their midst. You just got to decide how you want to ride the journey, right?
And when you're going to jump onto that bandwagon. The research that I mentioned earlier from Daniel Rock. So he's I think still a researcher. I have no idea which university. He wrote an article in which he talked about AI adoption and more specifically explained a sort of an experiment that he did on AI adoption, which I found was extremely interesting because what he basically did is he found two different companies with paralegals. So these were legal companies with lawyers and so forth. But he specifically targeted paralegals and had two options. With one company, he went with sort of a pitch deck, like a PowerPoint presentation explaining this is ChatGPT and this is what you can do with it. Try it out for a month. That was the statement. Try it out for a month. Then he went to the other company and same or similar pitch deck explained, this is ChatGPT and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, let's stop it right there. What are the tasks that you're doing right now that you hate? You have a month to figure out how ChatGPT can help you out with that. A month later, went back to those two companies, and company number one, the company that had that could try things out, did little to nothing to leverage. Why? Because I'm busy enough. Have you seen my inbox? My inbox is completely full of mails. I need to answer those, whatever. Yeah. Company number two had all of a sudden embraced ChatGPT in all types of forms. Why? Because all types of clerical jobs, the annoying, boring, difficult, and time-consuming tasks were in a way outsourced. They really tried to leverage AI just by making their lives a bit better. And what that generated was a group of people that was advantaged because they could do similar tasks way faster. They could focus on whatever they require, whatever requires their direct input, and all types of clerical jobs could be done by AI way faster. While the other initial company or the first company did not use it whatsoever. So the difficulty there is that in that article, it talks about one of the difficult skills that you need to develop. Some people have that naturally already, but some of the different skills that you need to develop is a form of, how do you call it? We call it critical thinking, but it's like being diligent, making sure that whatever is produced is fact checked, or you check it at least.
I got to confess, I was listening to you tell that story and I was like, and we're not talking about the anti-hallucination and anchoring training that we gave them. And I've got paralegals using ChatGPT. Oh my goodness, what's about to go wrong? It's really interesting the way wiring changes.
Yeah. It's there's so many things that can go wrong. But the thing is, if you've been using even let's just use ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude as an example. If you've been using that for quite a while, you've known that the output is not always perfect. Therefore, you'll have to do fact checking. You have to read through the text. The text might be set up nicely, but the idea or the meaning might be. So that critical thinking is a skill set that you can build up. And having that and AI, it will advantage you. You'll be faster. And there will be companies out there that would look at all of their people and see a group of people that is just faster. They generate their reports or their output or their code or their designs or whatever it is faster than another group. And there will be some managers or some companies that would say, you know what, we need to look at cost and we need to let some people go. There will be some people, there will be some companies that will jump onto that onto that path.
So we're talking about if you know how to use a computer, you might keep your job. Fast forward.
In a way, yeah. If you can type, if you can type fast, you can keep your job.
It does. I think what you're sharing out of that report, and it's on my list now. I've got to go and read it. But what you're sharing really resonates with me as I talk to more and more people at different places in terms of how they feel about AI. Is I think most people's head goes to how AI might help them or might impact the thing that they believe they are most special in their ability to do. But if you actually look at anybody and go, what percentage of your life do you spend doing the stuff that can only be done by the unique you? And what percentage of your life do you spend doing everything else? Right. And I think coding is a great one, right? Because every dev I talk to will go, AI writes terrible code. And, you can talk about the way it's changed until you're blue in the face, but they'll go, I tried it and it wrote terrible code. And when I was a real dev, I felt like I had a very intense relationship with my code. And it was very important to me that it was a beautiful thing. And the idea of letting something untrustworthy come and corrupt it, right? That was worse than letting a junior dev corrupt it. But if you go and you look and you look at the surveys say the average dev spends less than 20% of their time writing code. And obviously you go, well, a little bit of that extra time is thinking, but a lot of the extra time is I'm doing status reports, I'm answering phone calls, I'm attending meetings, and if you can just go with AI and you can go use it over here so that you spend less time doing the stuff that doesn't need your special genius and you get more time to spend doing and applying your genius, that's just a great way to think about it. But I think the other thing that happens, if I think back to when I started using AI for writing code, it's no wonder it did some really fascinating things because I had no idea how to control it. I would just prompt it and set it free and be amazed at the mess it made, but also amazed that it worked. As opposed to knowing, well, actually, if I want it to write decent code for me, this is everything I've got to surround it with. And I think for so many people, doing that thing that says, apply it to stuff that consumes time, doesn't need my genius, and doesn't necessarily give me energy, not only means you spend less time doing that stuff, but it means you're building the skills that you can then transfer in when you start to apply it to stuff you really care about.
Exactly. So I wonder when AI would be able to do my laundry, because that's something that I completely...
You need a robot for sure.
I thought you were going to tell us you were working on it, mate.
I wish.
Yeah, I would expect Ali to be in that domain, right?
I think that would be sort of the top priority in my life.
Okay,
but I haven't. All jokes aside, talking about jokes, how about we do a jiggle, which has been created this time. Was it by you, Stephan?
No, it was Nico.
Was it still Nico? My God,
still Nico.
Nico. Oh my God. So the question was. You're inviting Fred Flintstone to a meal tomorrow. What table etiquette does he have to learn? Stephan.
Yeah, I'm a pragmatic guy. So I would tell him, general rule, don't shout Wilma. Don't shout AI, right? We'll sort it out. Rule number 1, no more yabba dabba doo announcements because we know you're coming. AI knows you're coming. You don't have to announce yourself. Rule number 2, leave your club at home or in the car. Don't carry it around and try to solve problems with brute force. We're doing it differently nowadays, right? Even at table, there are some manners. And rule number 3, I would say, leave your attitude. We've always done it this way at home. It definitely is different in this restaurant that we are inviting you. Be aware, something will change. Just observe. Follow us, and it will be amazing.
That's very creative. Thank you, Stephan. How about you, Mark?
I reckon of all of the horrendous jiggles that Nico has given us over time, this was the most horrendous. That's what I reckon. Like, ever since it came in, I'm sitting there going, how on earth do I relate AI to Fred Flintstone coming to dinner? So I found a path. And my path was this, like if he's being looked after by AI waiters and AI chefs, I'm not so sure that he needs to learn anything. Because when I think about Fred Flintstone at dinner, right, the image that comes instantly to my mind is them pulling up and that rack of rigs getting stuck on the side of the car and being so big and heavy that it tips the car over.
Topples over.
Right? Mm-hmm. And Fred loves it large. But guess what? We all know if you play with AI much, it loves to overproduce. It loves to give you more than you asked for. And half your job when you're learning to prompt is to go, only give me what I actually want. So he'd feel right at home with being, treated with overproduction. But then the second thing that would happen, right, is that we know AIs love to stroke our feelings. They love to come back and tell us how brilliant we are and how insightful we are, right? It's like it's seeded into the conversation. I'm going to make you feel good about yourself, so you keep talking to me. And it really wouldn't matter what table manners Fred had, because those AI waiters would be going, oh, we love the energy and enthusiasm with which you eat.
And the appetite that you have.
What an easy life.
Ali. Yeah.
What about you?
I've been. I don't think I have struggled with the jiggle as much as with this one. This is a job well done by Nico. So I thought, if Fred Flintstone is going to come over for a meal tomorrow, and apparently I need to give him some ground rules, table etiquette that he needs to learn, apparently, I would say RTFC, which stands for read the effing context, understand the context, and then contribute. So I would ask Fred to observe the style of the table and the environment, the attitudes of the people at the dinner table, and to understand what are we trying to achieve with this dinner, other than having a nice meal. Because of course, we would like to have a nice meal, would like to have a relaxing conversation, just have a good time together. Essentially, I would ask Fred to fine-tune your behavior so that it matches whatever is expected.
So you would be focusing on context engineering for him then?
That's exactly what I would do. And ask him to do, yes. Yep. So it's a very applicable way of looking at how AI could be used, but I never thought Fred Flintstone would be part of the discussion.
I think Nico went, I'm not going to be there, so I'm not going to have to come up with an answer, so I can be as crazy as possible.
Well, so what is also crazy, and this will be our last question for today, is the reality of having AI-literate people and AI-illiterate people working next to each other in teams, in departments, in the organization, right around you, maybe also at home. But if we just keep on focusing on let's say the professional context, what will be the impact of having, two types of people working in the same team, the AI-literate and the AI-illiterate? I'll start with you, Mark.
I think right now, very few people are actually feeling any effects of it, because it's so new and corporate adoption is so scattered and fragmented that for most teams, AI-literate versus AI-illiterate probably doesn't matter, doesn't make much difference. But I think if you look forward, one of the really, really obvious applications of AI is in your internal operating model. And, one of the things we're exploring a lot at the moment in some of my coaching work is, what is it going to mean to manage a team that's hybrid human and agent? What is leadership going to look like there? And it might not be tomorrow. It's going to be a year or two away. And if you're a forward-thinking organization, you've got to think now, how am I moving my operating model in the direction that agents are going to be able to effectively participate? And so it's starting to change the way I think about communication, about information, about process design. There's such a big thread that's going to come through on the back of that. And I think there are going to be moments of transition where people start to activate these op models. And it's just assumed that you know how to work as part of a mixed team, and assumed you know how to lead a mixed team. And all of your op model conventions are built around the idea that you're in a mixed team. And when that moment comes for your organization, if you're not ready to be a part of that mixed team and at least know how to interact with some of your new, slightly different flavored teammates, you're in for a world of pain. But it's probably nothing new, because, I was chatting to my son the other day who has just got his first job, first real job, right, next year. And he was telling me about it's a shared position, and it's him and somebody else, and the other person is not going to take it particularly seriously. And he's like, how am I going to manage this? Because, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a way I want to achieve it. There's standards I want us to set for ourselves, and they're nowhere. And I said, mate, welcome to the first day of the next 40 years of your working life. You're going to be in imbalanced situations. That's a cultural norm of different people who have different capabilities and different attitudes to work. It's now just going to get lots more complicated. And some of those people are going to really resent the agents in their teams.
Let me pick that up, and I can second that, Mark. Right, from an overall perspective, still we have organizations, we have companies, then we have departments, we have units, we have teams. Still the same challenges, right? Even now, or before AI, we had discrepancies, we had people with different attitude, different speed. Starting with strategic execution, probably AI can manage that because there's a fragmentation. If you have those teams, and within the teams you have some disbalances, AI probably will push us, right? If you think about what normative elements we have in a company or organizations, we call it ethics, right? Ethical rules, stuff like that. AI will deal with that and probably will create even more transparency that you have a disbalance in your team. Or as you said, your son will probably appear on a dashboard that he's doing a good job. His peer is probably lagging, right? Self-organization becomes a different flavor because much more transparent. Although we have a stronger fragmentation in an organization, but it's kind of orchestrated. It plays music, it delivers value, right? And you could go through of many of these topics like workflow fragmentation. Some fear communication breakdown. I don't think so. The question is, how do you deal with information? You have it at your tips, and how do you deal with that? Still, you need the human element in there. Collaboration. Yes, we have dysfunctions nowadays, but the dysfunctions are on the table much earlier. And you have to deal with that, right? The question will be, and probably your question, Ali, is pointing towards performance, productivity. Will we see gaps, and how do we deal with that one, right? On a human level, now we have a collaboration between humans and AI agents. Still, it's a collaboration. I would say the impact is already there. The impact will be there with AI, but it will be a different way of dealing with it. Either AI will take over a major part and solve it, in brackets, making it more transparent, but you cannot not decide, no matter what kind of collaboration, what kind of setup you have over the time.
Yeah. In a way, this is indeed nothing different as how work looks like today, because indeed there are, you've experienced colleagues that have 20, 30 years of experience in a specific field and are extremely fast in finding a solution or finding the problem first, and finding a solution for that, while simultaneously in the same team or in the same department or the same group, we have a colleague that just joined the workforce or joined the company a week ago. So there's always has been this imbalance. The thing that I'm, not anxious about, but the thing that I'm a bit questioning is how an organization uses these experts. The moment that a person has consistently shown, to be very fast in finding a problem and finding a solution for it, or building a solution for it, all of a sudden that person gets bombarded with questions, and the person is constantly sort of pulled into one meeting and pulled into another meeting, and to basically.
So I'm going to jump on that for a minute, because I think this is where, if you're really living in an AI organization, you're going to see something different. Because what you're going to do is AI makes it really easy to experiment with systemizing somebody's brain. And one of the things I'm finding with the execs that I'm coaching is that the discussions we're having are, right, how do we take the way your brain thinks and encode that in something you can give to somebody else so they get access to a little bit of your brain thinking before they get near you? And it could be, and the one that's just sitting in my head right at the moment is individual development plans. So I don't know what you guys call them in the States. IDP would be a common acronym here. I'm an employee. I've got a plan that says how, with my employer, that says how are we planning to progress? What's my 5-year goal? What's my 1-year goal? What is the journey I'm taking on in my professional life? And they shared their original one with me, and they went, look, ChatGPT could help because this is really, really time consuming for me. And the first couple of times people develop one with me, we have to spend, it's like 8 hours before we're at the point where it's actually worth having a hard discussion about. And what I ask them to do is draft and then come to me, but the drafts come to me, it's like we need to go back and back and back. So how can I help it do that? And she has this really, like, she shared it with me and I looked and I went, that's the most phenomenal approach to thinking about a development plan, because what does it do? She's a big believer in Gallup strengths. So every leader who joins her team goes through a Gallup strengths assessment, and that she actually uses their Gallup strengths profile while they build out the elements of their development plan. Because if you think about what does Gallup strengths do, it says spend time where you get energy. And so she's got this whole way of thinking about how somebody approaching their development plan, how they setting some goals that play to their strengths, that address their weaknesses. And her goal was to go, could I get this to a point where I could hand somebody a GPT, it would hold their hand while they developed a draft, and then eventually they came to me and we had the discussion that I'm there to add value to, which is to go, how do I stretch your thinking that last little bit? And what was the payback from that? Well, the payback for her was potentially 8 hours per cycle per team member. There was a bigger payback that said, actually, one of the things that she tries to take people on the journey of is using the same kind of technique, cascading it down with their people. And then there's a journey that she's got to get them confident enough before they can start to feel free to cascade it. Well, actually, no, because you know what you can do? You can cascade the GPT. So you don't have to teach people how to write one because we've caught her thinking. And this is where I think the organizations are going. They're going to find the people who can think like that, and then they're going to give them the support to start to systemize it and capture it so the organization gets to take advantage of it rather than them being trapped in that.
Wow, we've been talking about agile at scale forever, and now we're talking about experts at scale, because that's basically what you're doing. We're multiplying individuals or persona behind the individual. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Looking at the time, by the way, gentlemen, we have arrived at the hour. So how about we finish this off with our just one key takeaway? Mark, what is yours?
So mine's simple, right? Indulge your curiosity. Just pause and be curious.
Thank you. How about you, Stephan?
I just had to change mine based on what Mark said. Take intent, thinking, and skills and make them tangible. Use AI.
Yeah. Just start, essentially. The one that I wrote down is that the unfortunate truth of the AI haves will outrun the AI have-nots, especially if the AI haves develop critical thinking skills. That's just what is going to happen. And with that, I think it's time to end the show. Next week, we have an episode. So September 20th, we have an episode in which we're going to talk about how leaders can navigate AI. Right? Hosted by our very own Stephan. Very cool.
Which should be a lot of fun. Knowing Stephan and his obsession with leadership, it should be great.
Yes.
The other throw I'd make, right, because I think we dealt with this very abstractly in terms of, we didn't go near prompt engineering, context engineering, and evals and hallucination management and any of that kind of classic Gen AI stuff because we're really focused on mindset. But if you're interested in thinking about what are some of the skills that I need to be building, I've just put a link in the chat to the Zapier AI fluency model. And it's a really fascinating picture when you look at it in terms of how to set expectations and the types of skills that you might need to be developing in different roles. So I've done way too much time looking at it because I'm working on an adaptation for it with a client. But if you're looking for some concrete answers that says, I don't want to learn curiosity, I want to know which hard skills might be useful, go have a look at the Zapier model and some of the conversations about that. It's really good.
Thanks. I'm going to check it out.
All right. Let's call it a wrap. We'll see you next week.